good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good middle of the night, depending upon what time it is wherever you are that you are watching these videos. For me, right now, it's good morning. It is, see, I have that thing where my taskbar is not coming up, so I'm going to press my Windows key on my keyboard. It is 8:06 in the morning on Monday morning, and I'm starting my work week. Though that doesn't mean I wasn't also working yesterday or Saturday, the day before, because making these lectures, doing a batch of lectures a week, is actually proving to be a little bit demanding, particularly with everything else that's been going on in my life. Sorry, rambling. Yeah, just had a son, my first child. It's pretty awesome, but also pretty time consuming. And I am sure as hell glad I waited until I was older in life to have kids, because I just don't think I would have been ready for it when I was young. I feel ready for it now. All right, enough chit chat, enough personal anecdotes. They say that's important in any educational setting for students and the teacher to sort of feel a rapport. And that's my excuse for rambling. Now we are going to move onward with learning. And we are learning about system software this week. System software. And I have a lesson plan, as any good teacher does. I have a lesson plan for you of all the things I want to teach you this week, all the things I want to teach you. I'll go through it in just a second. But what is system software? We're doing a little bit of an overview of what system software is. And my definition of system software is any software that makes your system run, your system being your computer system. System software is any software that makes your computer run. And we could distinguish system software from like application software. So we have computers right here, right? We have the computer. If you remember, a computer is broken down into hardware and software, And then the last couple of weeks, what we've been looking at is a lot of the hardware side of stuff. So we actually looked at hardware components, and we've looked at storage. We spent a whole week on storage, and we've looked at processing. And then last week we were looking at input and output devices. So we've really been focusing on hardware and how we break hardware out into IPOS, which are the four basic functions of a computer: input, process, output, storage, the four basic functions of a computer. This week we are moving on to talk about system software. So when we break a computer out into hardware and software, we can further break software out into system software and application software. And then we can break system software down into your operating system, your utilities, and your drivers. So we're going to learn this week about operating systems. We're going to learn about utilities, which are pieces of software which, of course, help make your system run. But I like to think about utilities on a computer kind of like utilities in a house. So just like, water service, trash service, having gas and electricity, just like all those utilities in your house help make your house run really well, we've got utilities in a computer, certain pieces of software which help make our computer run well, like disk cleanup or disk defragment or antivirus software. All those pieces of software is known as utility programs. And then we've already talked about drivers a little bit, but we're going to talk about drivers some more. And this all falls under system software. Sometimes people also include in system software translators. I'm not including it because, what the hell? Why include it? Translators are basically when you write a program. I'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about programming in a future week. When you write a program, you write it in a programming language, and then it needs to be translated down to zeros and ones, because that's all computers understand. So that's what a translator is. And we'll talk about it more in the programming week. All right, blow by blow. What are we looking at this week? Right now we are doing the system software overview, and then I'm going to give you, we're going to talk about operating systems. We'll have a definition of an operating system. We'll look at the basic functions of an operating system. We'll look at different types of operating systems. I'll give you some examples of operating systems that we find out there in the marketplace: Windows and Mac and Android and Linux, so those being some of them. We'll look at some statistics on operating systems to see which operating systems for desktop computers are the most popular in the marketplace. We are going to look at the history of Microsoft and Apple. because they've had a pretty interesting history and pretty big rivalry. And it's really kind of interesting just to remember that the personal computer revolution, check it out. When I grew up, there were no computers. Like, you know, there were computers, but they were at the university. You know, but people did not have computers in their home. When I grew up, when I was a kid, there were no computers in the home. Television was like a rarity, right? Like there were people who didn't have TVs in their home. Yeah, generally speaking, most people had TVs. But, you know, it was like a crappy TV and there's like all this snow on it and it had a really small screen and you had like 3 channels to choose from. And if you didn't like what was on the 3 channels, you were just out of luck. That was it. You're out of luck. And I don't know why I'm talking about all that. Because back in the 70s, the personal computer revolution started in the mid 70s. And that's kind of like amazing just to stop and think about it, how far we've come in only 40 years. Has it really been that long? Wow. Yeah, pretty much. It's been about 40 years. But it's amazing to think about how far we've come in 40 years from having no computers in our society to now having, you know, computers everywhere, finding them everywhere. Computers are pervasive. They're ubiquitous. They are everywhere. And they're, you know, at the beginning of the personal computer revolution, when people started to get computers in their homes, like the basic IBMs or the basic Apple IIs, Apple IIes, at the start of the personal computer revolution, Microsoft and Apple were like the 2 key players. And the game wasn't so much about the hardware. The game was about the operating system. What does that mean? People didn't really care what hardware the computer was made of, if it was IBM or Hitachi or you know, whatever computers were around back then, or Mac. What they really were interested in, or what was really the big business gameplay, was the operating system. And so Microsoft and Apple are both companies that made their mark by creating operating systems for the personal computers in the personal computer revolution back in the mid 70s and late 70s and early 80s. And they were at odds with each other. They were competing for market share to see who would become dominant, the dominant player. And generally speaking, this is just my opinion, Apple had a better product, but that didn't matter. Microsoft had better business acumen, and they were aligned with IBM, which had a lot of momentum and influence and power in the business marketplace at that time. And so Microsoft won out, even though they had a crappier product. And it's a really pretty interesting story. Microsoft built their company on a lie. So I'll tell you how Microsoft built their company on a lie. And if they didn't lie, they wouldn't exist today, probably. They probably would, because Bill Gates is tenacious and tenable is what I want to say. I'm not sure if that's a word. Tenacious and, you know, relentless and, yeah, you know, doesn't give up. So he would have like succeeded even if he was selling hot dogs at the park. He would have been like the best hot dog at the park seller guy in the world, and we would all be able to buy hot dogs at the park everywhere in the world. So we're going to talk about the Microsoft-Apple history rivalry. You'll hear about how Microsoft was founded on a lie. Microsoft founded on a lie. And then I'll show you a trailer or introduce you to a resource. You could go look at this trailer for Pirates of Silicon Valley. And I can't just include movies that other people have made in my movies, because if somebody else made the movie, they own that movie. So this trailer, Pirates of Silicon Valley, or any other movie I'm showing you, like go watch this on YouTube, I can't just include those here in my lectures because I don't own them. I can say, hey, go look this up and watch it, and you could go watch it at their YouTube account or somewhere on YouTube. But if I include other people's material in that way in my videos here, my videos might get blocked, and I don't want my videos to get blocked. So we're going to talk about all that. We're also going to talk about components of an operating system, like the kernel, user interface, that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about processing methods within an operating system, multitasking, sequential, simultaneous. Parallel probably will be in there. Yeah, it's in there. We'll talk about virtual memory. We'll talk about buffering and spooling. We'll talk about the user interface. We're going to talk about virtualization, which is something you hear all the time, and just what the hell is virtualization. We'll talk about utility programs. I'll give you examples of utility programs. We'll talk about drivers. We're going to learn some awesome essential computer skills like installing drivers, opening with, which we've already seen, but I'll review it. Having your operating system updated, having antivirus software, keeping your antivirus software definitions updated, We'll talk about minimum system requirements and why it's important for you to know about that. We will look at Control-Alt-Delete again, even though that we've already seen that before. I just like to make sure I'm thorough, so that means that sometimes I'll be a little redundant. And if you find yourself watching a video and you're like, we've already seen this, just hit skip. And yeah, jump to the next video if that happens. We'll look at how you're supposed to remove USB drives. I found a lot of people don't know that you're supposed to eject USB drives. A lot of people just yank them out. We'll look at uninstalling software and how you do that. Even though we've seen that, I'll show it again in more detail. We'll look at recovery partitions and system restore. Again, we've seen this, but we'll look at it in more detail. We'll look at installing an operating system, or talk about it, and we'll look at what open source software is. And we're going to see how Linux is built. And we're going to see some stuff about Bill Gates. I've got a lot of stuff down here about Bill Gates because he's a pretty instrumental, seminal figure, not only in the tech industry, but in the world, and particularly in philanthropy now. He started the Gates Foundation, and they're doing some rocking things in the world, really, you know, adding to the overpopulation by saving lives. So I'm not sure if it's positive. Maybe we should just let everybody die because there's already too many of us. So we're going to look at Bill Gates, including a tribute to Bill Gates by David Letterman, and then some of the stuff on 60 Minutes that Bill Gates is doing in the world, and also him reflecting on his relationship with Steve Jobs. All right, I'm 42 years old. What have I done with my life? I don't know. I've become a teacher. I didn't start Microsoft. I didn't start Apple. But hopefully I'm having a little bit of a difference in your life, and you're appreciating and learning and growing from watching these lectures, because I don't know, I feel like I'm reflecting on that, because there's Bill Gates, there's Steve Jobs, and then here I am. What did I do? All right, we can only do what we can do, and this is where I'm at. And this is week 6, and we're going to learn about system software.